tell, then you see the road. I'm out to my soul into the sides whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect. Do it. All of that green together, the truth, yeah. Tell you the
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 14th part of, What If BEN10 Meets the Boys? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of fan62 on fanfiction.net. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Short while later. Kumbai Isolat Isabat Alienani. The leader says and 3 of his men remove the blindfolds on them. Ah, my eyes. Ben exclaims as the sun makes his eyes sting. Elena hisses as she closes and blinks, while Kimiko just blinks slight pain. Well, this is either the worst funded military base in Syria or we found who we're looking for. Ben says as they look around. They were in a flat area surrounded by tall mountains with caves dotting the sides, with tents and tarps covering areas. On top of some ledges were soldiers with binoculars keeping an eye out for planes and helicopters. Some were already holding RPGs or Stinger missiles launchers ready to fire just in case, with their heads in a swivel. All around is a hodgepodge of soldiers working on their mix of weapons, foreign and domestic, old and new, soldiers training and working out. Many had captured Syrian uniforms that they modified so they wouldn't be hit by friendly fire, but there were quite a few who wore simply civilian clothes with ammunition and grenade belts. Civilians were also seen, women with hijabs, faces covered and uncovered, were walking around doing work of some sort. Several were even dressed for combat. Some farm animals were also seen like goats, sheep and chickens, in small makeshift farms. As were a couple of horses. Kids were also all over. Doing chores like washing clothes, getting water from a stream, tending to the animals and small crops and gardens. Of course there were also ones relaxing and even playing soccer/football, real football. There was also injured people, with parts of their body bandaged. Some without certain body parts. Several were even suffering from less visible injuries that had no certain end. Be they young or old. Tealmin Hada al-Tariki. The Syrian leader that lead them here said and the translator from before said. He wants you to follow him. Sir, yes sir. Ben salutes and they follow him. They do a soccer ball comes by Kimiko's feet and she turns in the direction it came from. It was a young Syrian boy wearing long pants that had to be rolled up in the bottom and held up with a tightened belt. Arkilha. He says and when she doesn't respond he pretends to kick a ball and repeats. Arkilha. And she kicks it back to him and he goes back to his game with several other kids. Feels like a movie. Ben says as he looks around. If I was gonna set up a terrorist or resistance group this would be great. I mean it screams fortress. Yeah. Elena agrees. Even if they get bombers to hit this place they'd have to be incredibly accurate if they want to hit their target and even then there's no telling if it'll work. Kimiko then signs which Elena translates. Like Japanese tunnels in Iwo Jima and Okinawa, held out even after the war was over. Plus the mountains make it difficult for their tanks. Only way to travel is on foot or by horse. The English-speaking Syrian points. La tukalimyahum hada afila. The leader speaks sternly. Eventually they reach a cave and the leader gestures for them to sit. They were courteous enough to give them pillows, but several men still kept their guns at the ready. The leader, indicating by his lack of a rifle, but sporting a appealing sidearm, sits across from them. Ana al-Qaid Bashik ma azmayakum. He says. I am Commander Bashik. What are your names? The English-speaking Syrian translates. Wait, you're the commander? Ben questions in a moment of confusion. No, he's just translating for him. Elena says, pointing to the leader. I was kinda expecting something like, the great and mighty, blah blah blah. Ben tells her. This isn't Star Wars and he's not a giant fat slug crime lord. Elena tells him. Fat? The Syrian commander questioned knowing the word, and feeling insulted. The translator quickly corrects this and he nods in understanding. Just after another masked soldier says something. The Syrian translator then says in English. He wants to know if you know Shakira. Ben, Elena and Kimiko all shake their heads and he sighs in disappointment before backing away. Well, I'm Ben Tennyson, or BEN10. Ben introduces himself. This is Elena and Kimiko and we're here to find Nakib, the exploding man who was part of ISIS or whatever. The Syrian translates and the leader scoffs before speaking to the translator. You came here to stop him? The three foreigners nod their heads. Commander Bashik then thanks Allah before talking to the translator. He thanks Allah that you have come, because Nakib is on his way here. What? Why, how do you know this? Elena asks as the three of them. Before they could continue, a woman wearing a hijab but with not face covering came in from the outside. She was carrying a tray with 3 bowls on it, which she nearly dropped when she saw Ben, Elena and Kimiko. Bashik lamada lam tikberni ana ladena duyuf. She says looking at Bashik. Inayahum lay su difan, wahada lays mzlan, ina coffee. Kult lak alf maraten. Bashik says with a frown as if he had this conversation before. Snanan, hada tajid lana mzlan hikaikian, sayatamo altimo me hada al kaf ila ana watana. The woman says then brings the bowls over the 3 guests and sets it by them. She then speaks and the translator translates. Welcome, I am Daima, my mule of a husband didn't think to tell me we had guests, so I am very sorry for the poor decorum. Here is some soup, again if I had known you were coming I would have prepared something better. Oh no, you don't have to. Elena tries to politely decline. The woman speaks and it's translated. I'll be back with some tea. Just then a young girl around Ben and Elena's age comes in with a smaller tray with cups of tea. The older Syrian woman then says. Amara kult lak and tartaha. Lakid, erit and Usaida. The young Syrian girl says as the older woman takes the tray and gives it to Ben, Elena and Kimiko. If she didn't know we were coming, why did she make this? Ben asks. It was obviously for someone else but she's giving it to us. Elena answers, while Kimiko starts eating. The leader Bashik and his wife Daima soon get into an argument. Sweet dinner and a show. Ben says amused at the display while sipping the tea. Hey buddy, can you put subtitles in for us? He requests and the translator shakes his head. Shifter. Amara, the young girl who brought the tea, exclaims with an accent while pointing at Ben's wrist. BEN10. Ben says. Not Shifter, I hate that name. And the translator relays this. Daima then examines Ben's wrist and sees the omnitrix. Hal hu huna lamusiadatana. She asks. She asking if you came to help us. The translator says. We're here to stop Nakib, the exploding man. Elena says, which is related in Arabic. That's our main purpose here. Daima then starts to shed tears and goes to hug him while thanking Allah. And Ben just sits there awkwardly. I think it's safe to see we're welcomed here. Ben says. Bashik then stands up and starts to leave the cave while gesturing for them to follow him. This they do. Bashik, the translator and the Syrian who asked about Shakira also joined them. They walked outside in some distance into another cave, one where there were 6 occupants. 3 were soldiers/rebels, each armed with an old, but reliable and functioning, WW1 or 2 vintage Maxim machine gun. Each was set up on a tripod pointed at 3 men. What's going on here? Elena asked. Rather than say anything, Bashik pulled something out his pocket. Compndv. He enunciates slowly. So they. Ben asks and Bashik tells one to demonstrate their powers. One of them does so by making circular motions with his hand, and even though there was a considerable distance between his hand and the ground, the sand started swirling around. This man was a soup. Holy crud. Ben says. America, CIA several hours ahead. Madeline Stillwell was entering the CIA for appointment with Susan Rayner, the deputy chief. As she walked in and headed towards the office, she was stopped by security. "I'm sorry ma'am, but you have wait here," the suited man tells Stillwell. "Oh, I have an appointment with Susan Rayner, the deputy director." Stillwell points out with a smile. "I'm sorry, she's in another meeting." The man tells her. "Been going on for hours, you're just going to have to wait." "What?" Stillwell questions and checks her watch. "How much longer will it take?" "I'm not sure, all I know is that it's very serious." The man tells her. In the meeting room, Susan Rayner and Lily Choi were sitting across from each other, bored out of their minds. They had been sitting here since Ben and the girls were on their way to Syria. On paper they were in a meeting discussing what Ben should receive for handing in super-powered criminals, both domestic and international. In reality they have just been killing time in order to delay the meeting with Vought until Ben captured Blaster. "So how'd you meet the kid?" Rayner asked. Well, first he gave citizenship status to a bunch of illegal Chinese immigrants, then used me as bait to lure Vought into negotiating a settlement." Lily answered. "You?" Some psycho set up a meeting with my kids present in the park, then he snuck into the CIA building." Rayner answers. "Every time we're in the same room it's like everything is from a cartoon or some SHT." She adds, both amused and frustrated by that. "Or a very good fanfiction." Lily responds with a smile. Back in Syria. As the three saw the man controlling the sand for a bit, he was instructed to stop and he did. Bashik then speaks while gesturing to the three prisoners/hostages/guests. The translator then said. "Men like Nakib injected them as well as others." Bashik speaks and it's being translated. "Of the dozens of people forced to take this terrible potion." Bashik speaks. "These are the only ones who survived and Nakib gave us until tonight to give them to him." "So he can do what?" Ben asks. Bashik then slowly says something which is translated. "Only horrible things." "Well, he won't get them." Ben says in a very sure tone. "You will stop him?" The translator asks. "It's what we're here for." Ben replies, which gets translated. Bashik raises an eyebrow and speaks, which gets translated. "I have lived long enough to know that when Westerners come to our homeland they want something." "Yeah." Ben answers. "Nakib." Bashik then says something aggressively. "You or your government?" The translator says. "Both." Ben answered. Bashik then starts ranting. "Of course. Rant. Always the same with you Western governments. Rant. We need your help, you do little, when you want you something, you come and invade our lands, destroy our homes and kill our people. Rant. And then when you get what you want you turn against us. Rant. My own family helped the British and T.E. Lawrence to get rid of the Ottomans in your World War I, then when war was over we become slaves under new rulers, British, French, American, Russian, you all are the same." There's a pause as Bashik says. "Albarabira." Which translates to barbarians. Well, Ben Drgs as Elena and Kimiko have nothing to say. "I can't speak for what happened before, and what is happening now. All I can do is offer to stop Nakib if you tell me where he is." Bashik in a disgruntled tone speaks and it's translated. "Not like I have a choice." Pause as Bashik speaks. "He'll be at foot of the mountains tonight, he's expecting me to bring them there." Elena then voices something. "I'm confused, how did you get the compound V?" she asks. Bashik's translator says. "Regime soldiers had a case of this vile poison and tested it on several soldiers who died." Pause. "After it killed several of their own they decided to try it on the villagers. Any man who didn't volunteer was shot and their family slaughtered. Bashik then gestures to the 3 Syrian soups. Ramel. He points to the sand-powered soup. Alsakan. Points to another. Sarab. Kimiko then signs to Elena and asks. What are their powers? Sand. Geyser. Mirage. The translator translates. So sand powers. Elena points to Ramel. Illusion powers. Points to Sarab. And the last one. Points to Alsakan while trying to figure it out. Alsakan holds his palm up and a bit of water shoots up from it. Oh, water powers, cool. Elena says. Maybe they can help us. Ben suggested then turn to Ramel, Alsakan and Sarab. Do you want to fight with us against Nakib? Ben asked and the translator relayed this. Immediately the 3 shifted nervously in fear and gave obvious protests while speaking their native tongues. Which didn't need to be relayed to Ben, who understood that they were both afraid of hurting people, themselves or anyone with their powers. He felt that way when he started that forest fire and when Grandpa Max got hurt by Rojo at that gas station. Look, I get it. Ben spoke. Translation, Anzuru lakad fahimtu. You didn't want these powers, but now you have them. So make the most of them. It's your choice. Ben continued. Translation, Lam takan turit hadhi alqua, lakinak tamtalikua alan. Lida istafada minha, ila aksa had ina iktiaruka. Ben then started to walk out and leave the 3 new soups with their thoughts, but was blocked by the Shakira fan Syrian. Oh, we're not done. Ben questioned. Bashik then speaks to the translator, who relays. What are you going to do about Nakib supporters? Supporters? Ben asks, turning around baffled with this new information. What supporters? The translator then relays. He has a hive of followers, either loyal to his cause, or too afraid of him. Even if you take him, they will still be here. You get rid of the parasite, but you forget they lay eggs. First of all, gross. Ben says with a shiver. Second, they won't be a problem. We can't be seen, remember. If we get recognized and they put it on the internet, the world will see Blaster and then Soups will be in the army. Elena reminds him. Almost forgot about that. Ben replied, then turns to the others. Any ideas? Why must you not be seen on internet? The translator asks, without needing a translation to be relayed. It's complicated. Ben says. But nobody can know we're here or that Nakib exists. The translator then turns to the leader and starts talking. Yuridan Ikfa Waktahim Huna. He says. Bashik scoffs. Biotabe Yafialuna. Yajib and Nisadaham. The translator says. Bashik looks at him in surprise. Basil Hal Antmajnunu. He questions. The translator is now identified as Basil. Yumkinu Musaedatunaya Abana. Basil points out. Why la faina hukamata sof tastafid mana. Bashik points out. The two then begin an intense argument about if they should help them or not. While Ben, Elena and Kimiko stare amongst themselves. All thinking, what are they saying? Eventually the arguing stops and Bashik gestures for Basil to relay what they agreed. My father says he'll order his fighters to fight against the followers of Blaster, while you fight him elsewhere. Ben, Elena and Kimiko nodded with that in agreement. Plus, while Ben fights Blaster, Kimiko can help the rebels fight his supporters. But Basil continues. You must make sure Nakib must never come here again. Never. Of course. Ben agree. Now let's get to work. Scene cut. In an area of the camp, rebels, fighters, civilians and children are listening intently as the imam leads prayers. A makeshift barrier to separate the men and the women was constructed out of fabric. Ben wanted to ask why, but Elena and Kimiko quietly ordered, and slightly threatened, him to remain quiet and just do what the others are doing. The Imam was speaking Arabic. Ila mu'ribana al-shujian, tad hikaru, wakatilu fi sable ala aladin yukatalan mikam wala tatadu. Ben heard but did not understand. As the Imam kept talking, Ben just stayed silent and copied what the people near him did. Soon they got up and any space that was left between anyone was closed and made Ben feel claustrophobic. Then they got on their knees and, presumably, said their prayers. Man, my knees hurt. Ben thought after a few moments. When it was finally signaled that it was over, people began leaving. Scene cut. The scene was now of organized chaos. Fighters were loading ammunition into their guns, or rockets in their RPGs and grenades in their belts. Mothers and children were gathering what belongings they could and releasing any animals they couldn't keep. They were also taking anything they could to build up a defense for when Nakib and his followers came. They were worried about regime attacks, bombings by either Russian or American planes, but it seems they are distracted by other issues. There was also a lot of arguing as many fighters wanted to stay and fight, but were being told they need to go with the civilians. Like the Spartans at Thermopylae, only married men with sons were allowed to stay and fight. With great reluctance and even tears, as fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, friends, neighbors, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, cousins and friends were split. Mostly men would stay behind as the women were to be the caregivers to their family and loved ones. Also because should the women be captured by Nakib and his supporters, who knows what they would do to them, if they weren't killed. Not all men would stay behind, but nearly all of those told to leave tried vehemently to stay. But these were young men, teenagers even, who could have a future, and more importantly become the breadwinner of the family. Though this was not always the case. The ones that stayed knew they would most likely die, and should they live they may likely never see their family. Now as Basil was relaying the plan once more for Ben and Bashik, he repeated his words in a redundant fashion. As he was going to be leaving with his brother, sister and mother. So very soon Ben and Bashik would not be able to understand each other. At least not with words anyhow. The plan was pretty simple. Let Nakib and his goons come in, Ben goes and takes on Nakib, while Kimiko and the rebel fighters take on his goons. As an added incentive for them to come in, the 3 Syrian soups Ramel, Alsakan and Sarab were to be used as bait. The 3 of them were nervous, and for good reason. They may have powers, but they're inexperienced with them. They were even afraid to hug their families goodbye. Ben turned into 4 arms and was breaking and moving rocks around. He did this to give little cover to the attackers, and put much of the rocks on top of 2 ledges. So when would Ben take the fight with Nakib elsewhere, the Syrian rebels could do some controlled explosions to make sure nobody followed them. As Ben and the Syrian rebels prepare for the battle, Kimiko goes to Elena, who just helped one of the last civilians leave. She brings her to one of the above the ground. She then begins to her and inside the cave. Stay here. Elena nods. Got it. She adds, then takes a deep breath as the fear finally sets in. Sensing her fear, Kimiko kneels down and hugs her, tight but not too tight. Pulling back, she grabs the young girl's shoulders and gives a look that says, "It's gonna be okay." Before signing that she will be back and going back down. Sun was starting to set. New York City, at a random street. A man with his hood up wearing a jean jacket was walking out of a convenience store with a burner phone. Opening it and tossing the box in an overflowing street garbage bin, he began dialing a number. After several rings, someone picked up. With Annie. Annie was getting ready for her interview for this YouTuber when she gets a call. She's wearing regular clothes as this is not a VOT-sponsored interview. It's a number she does not recognize, but she answers it. Hello. Annie. Huey. Annie exclaims, surprised. I. Huey tried to speak, but Annie immediately hung up. With Huey. Huey sighed as he heard the call end. Should he have expected it to go well? Looking around to see if anyone was watching, he threw the phone in a garbage truck making its rounds and continued walking. Some noticed, but it was New York, most people didn't care unless it affected them. Back with Annie. As Annie sat down in the chair next to the host. A Caucasian man with auburn hair and a laid-back attitude named Justin Dwyer. "Hey, you ready?" he asks with a seemingly charming smile. Annie tried to answer, but was interrupted by her mother. "She's fine, she's a star." One-time power went out at a pageant and she lit up the room. Donna January butted in with a smile. "Literally, the show must go on," she said. She added with pride in her daughter and in herself. Annie fake smiled and added. "Yeah, we're all good here." Justin smiled and signaled to one of his cameramen. "Okay, then we're going live on all platforms in 30 seconds. Syria. Naked, as what's inscribed on his chest, is walking up the trail to Bashik's camp. With him were dozens of other Syrians that believed in his cause, or at least his power. Nakib instructed Bashik to bring down Ramel, Alsakan and Sarab or he'll kill them all. Nobody would be foolish enough to question his authority, especially now. Right? As he walked to where Bashik's camp was supposed to be, he saw it was abandoned. So he tried to run. Perhaps he could track him. Hush blam. An explosion from an RPG caused them all to freeze. This was quickly followed by machine gun and small arms fire. Immediately several of Nakib's fighters went down, specifically the ones closest to him. He was also getting hit with bullets, but they were ineffective. Before Nakib could do anything in response, he noticed a green flash to his left. Turning, all he saw was a fireball coming straight at him, barely even seeing Heat Blast shooting at him for a tackle. With an Nakib and Heat Blast just flew straight across away from the fighting. They flew towards the passage that as planned, and as planned Bashik's fighters blew the side so the rock's 4 arms piled block it. As Bashik rebel fighters were shooting from their positions, Kimiko stayed back and fired a gun as well. She could easily take them on, but per protocol of not exposing the world of possible soup terrorists should they shoot her and see her revive, word could spread fast. Still, every bullet she took is one less for someone else to take, and thanks to Shining Light she knew how to use a gun. With Ben. Heat Blast was still flying in a tackle position against Nakib's torso. Finally having Nakib self-detonated, blowing them both. Heat Blast blew back, tumbling on the ground a bit, as did Nakib in the opposite direction. Both quickly got up. Nakib then spoke. "Anabi," with disgust. "End of the line, pal," Heat Blast said, as he threw a fireball at Nakib who tried to run at him. When it hit, Nakib reeled back from the hit, stunned slightly. Heat Blast then ran at him and delivered left and right cross, then kicked him while doing a backflip. As he landed, he crouched down, pulled his hands back, turning them into fists, and thrusted them vigorously forward, unleashing a stream of fire at the Syrian soup. As Nakib was blown into the side of a rock wall, Heat Blast stood up and clapped his hands as if he was dusting them off. "That wasn't so tough," he said, but as the smoke cleared, Ben saw Nakib's form was still standing, just smoking, and his pants were miraculously on. But strangely not his shoes. Boys does a really good job with details such as how translucent can only be invisible without clothes, but in this case I don't want Ben to fight him naked. Weird enough for me when I had to have him face against Jack from Jupiter. I spoke too soon, didn't I? Ben said to himself. Nakib was fuming and prepared his body for self-detonation. Only instead of a large explosion he somehow managed to focus the energy in his hands and somehow aimed it all at Heat Blast. Quick to react, Ben jumped out the way, but when the energy hit ground where he just was, he was still blown away. Literally. Okay. Heat Blast spoke as he shook his head to get rid of the dizzy spell he was suffering from after that. "This is going to be tougher than I expected," he added as he turned back to Nakib, who was gritting his teeth as he prepared another attack. As he let loose another blast shot, Heat Blast shot himself up in the air to avoid it and threw crescent flames at him. With the Syrian rebels. At Bashik's camp things were going well for Bashik's men, despite being outnumbered. Defending was much easier on this type of terrain, and like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith, they held the high ground. So any of Nakib's supporters had a tough time aiming their guns. Meanwhile Bashik's rebels could fire from cover. Using an assortment of weapons, the famous AK-47, bolt-action rifles from possibly before WW2, machine guns that were antiques in WW2, grenades, even rocks. One was even throwing landmines upside down like frisbees, so they would detonate once they hit the ground. Despite all this, the rebels still suffered losses, and there was less of them than their enemies. Not to mention they all knew each other very closely, so each loss was like losing a family member for many. But they fought on. Guns shooting, shrapnel flying, rocks flailing, smoke and dust rising, and bodies falling. This went on, seemingly for hours, and it seemed like it could go on forever. Though it was only a matter of time before Nakib's men ran out of bodies or Bashik's fighters ran out of ammo. But after suffering heavy losses in the dozens, probably 100 even, Nakib's supporters began pulling back. Soon the cracking and flashing of guns firing began fading and becoming less frequent. Until finally it stopped. Bashik and his rebels kept their guns aimed forward just in case it was a ploy to lower their guard, or perhaps they were organizing another assault. But after several tense moments, people began to breathe sighs of relief as they felt they were safe for the moment. Distant explosion. All eyes turned in one direction, where they saw a large burst of flames. No doubt where Ben and Nakib were fighting. Mediterranean Sea. In the Mediterranean Sea, east of the divided island of Cyprus, an American aircraft carrier and a task force of several ships centered around the USS Quincy Adams, an aircraft carrier I made up a sailor, was reading scans from drones in the area. Because of the darkness and terrain, it was hard for planes to do recon over the mountainous Syrian region, but several drones were able to detect heat signatures. This sailor was comparing images from ones less than an hour old. In one area where Ben and Nakib are fighting, the red sword, indicating there was either a lot of bodies in one concentrated area or a huge explosion occurred. Typing in his computer, he reduced the scans to minutes apart, showing different patterns of red each time. So either a crazy fire was going on or something else. Ma'am, we have something in sector. Lists off a code indicating where the area was. There seems to be a very large and strange anomaly. The sailor speaks the CO who was in charge of overseeing this area of the ship when came over to see the scans. It was the CO's adjutant. A scrawny sailor who just ran from the top of the deck. Sir, ma'am, you gotta see this. He says, before gesturing to follow him, ignoring basic protocol to salute. Which was strange because the CO knew him to be a man who follows everything to the letter. As she got onto the deck, the ship she was on had its port facing Syria. If there was sunlight, one could see the land. Ma'am. The adjutant said, finally saluting and giving her a pair of binoculars before directing her sights. It'll happen any second now, he tells her. The CO was looking and started getting annoyed with this as she saw nothing but shapes of the region's mountains and hill. Then suddenly a stream of fire shot up. The F? She asked as she tried to zoom in, but they were still just too far. There was then another burst of flames or explosion, tiny in the distance, but huge enough that even without the binoculars one could see the flames in the distance. I thought it could be an explosion, but it's too irregular. The adjutant spoke. Ma'am. Salutes. The CO puts the binoculars down and turns to him. Get me the Admiral. She orders. USS Quincy Adams Admiral Quarters. Yes, I understand we need to check it out, but it's too risky to send out our planes. The Admiral says to the CO over a radio while looking at what she was looking at. And without a viable threat or orders from higher up, we have no authority to fly planes in their airspace. Admiral, sir, it could be an enemy munitions dump, and if it is, then there could be more. Plus there's some chatter about ISIS activity in the area. May we at least do reconnaissance just to see? The CO requests. Very well. Take 2 choppers, land some men, but under no circumstances must they engage. The Admiral tells her. Last thing we need is Fox News blasting CRP again, and they do that enough. Yes sir. The CO responds, grateful her commanding officer allowed her to survey the situation. Soon Navy SEALs were gearing up on 2 other ships, each with a helipad that had a chopper on it. Each one carrying 6 men who would land on the ground, the pilots, plus 2 more who would stay on the sides as extra eyes and fire support. They then took off. With Ben and Nakib. The battle was going in circles. Literally. Heat Blast was riding a fireball shooting flames at Nakib, that either missed or did little. While Nakib fired concentrated explosions at Heat Blast that he avoided while flying around him. Ben then decided to fly straight towards him on an angle going down. Nakib saw this. And concentrated his energy into a powerful blast, but didn't unleash it until it was time. Heat Blast was getting closer and closer, but Nakib still decided to wait as he focused the blast energy. Then when there was about several meters or more between them he fired. But Ben dodged by deactivating fireball he was riding on, before he tucked and rolled under it, missing him and hitting a bunch of rocks in the distance. As he reached a crouching position just a couple of feet away from Nakib, Heat Blast fire breathed him. At close range Nakib had to close his arms and back up from the intense heat. But he started building up power for a self-detonation attack, which manifested seconds later. Blasting Ben back into the rocks. As Heat Blast shook his head while using the rock wall behind him for support, Nakib charged at him and began choking him. Yamat Kinzer Amrikian. He says. You know I'd have a better comeback if I knew what you were saying. Heat Blast said as he was trying to get him to let go. Unbeknownst to him the omnitrix glowed slightly. I said die American pig. Nakib repeatedly, but he suddenly seemed to be speaking in English. Well if I'm a pig you're a dash, Ben's eyes widen. Wait I understood you. Unknown to him he was also now speaking Arabic. Nakib didn't let that distract him though and began charging up for another self-detonation. Oh crud. Heat Blast said, then, kinda like Iron Man, he used his hands and feet as rocket propulsion systems and shot up. But despite his initial surprise Nakib managed to hold on to him, via his leg. So Heat Blast had to kick him off, just seconds before he detonated. Boom. But the blast still hit him. With the Navy helicopters. As the 2 Navy helicopters were making their way for the Syrian mainland the pilots saw something akin to a rocket shooting up. Incoming. The pilot shouts thinking it's an enemy missile or some other defense. But then it blows a distance away from them. The F was that? The pilot in the other helicopter exclaims. Do we keep going? Affirmative, until we receive orders otherwise we proceed. The pilot of the leading chopper says. They soon land on a flat area, suitable for helicopters to land. Soon both were emptied and the ranking officer began rounding up men. After selecting several men to guard the LZ landing zone they men headed for the location of those explosions. With the rebel fighters. Boom. Elena, Kimiko, Bashik and his fighters looked up and saw an explosion and 2 figures falling. Kimiko turns to Elena and signs, think he's okay. Which was answered with another distant and visible burst of flames, followed up by an explosion. All were watching this, including Ramel Sand, Alsakan Geyser and Sarab Mirage. Elena and Kimiko both looked concerned, things seemed to be getting intense. Elena then went up the 3 Syrian soups and said. You have to help him. She requested urgently then struggled to remember the Arab word for help. You see it. She tells them. Him. Points to another explosion that's happening where Ben and Nakib are fighting. Every one of the fighters turns to Bashik, their leader. His say was the one that counted the most. Ein dama bad ana al nidalu, wadna bayanana lan nakan madanan liahad siwa and fuzina. Walakina alan nan madanan layam, deuna nuzadid layam. He said, readying his Kalashnikov. With Ben. Both Heat Blast and Nakib were slowly getting up from that last blast. Okay, how do you still have pants? Not complaining, just wanna know. Heat Blast asked, generally curious. Nakib just started going towards Heat Blast again. Die American pig. He said again. You know I liked it better when I couldn't understand you. The Prionite replies as he gets back up into a standing position. At least then you sounded original. He added as he formed a sphere of fire and shot a stream of flames at him. Nakib crossed his arms as he dug his feet and withstood the attack. Then began charging for another self-detonation. So Ben pointed his palms forward and used the propulsion to fly back. As he avoided the blast, he launched himself up and forward. Rhea! With a shout he came down diagonally at Nakib with a right punch to his face. Then spinning around he swung a left, before pointing his palms forward and shooting flames out of them like the jets of a plane and flying back. And out of range, just as Nakib charged up for another explosion. And like before, Heat Blast launched himself up towards Nakib and formed a fire tornado that he sent to Nakib. However, Heat Blast flew up and dove in the middle of the tornado at Nakib, riding a fireball like a surfboard. During this has created another fireball, but this one was a lot more concentrated. At the same time Nakib for another blast. Time seemed to slow as Heat Blast got closer, and closer and closer until finally their attacks met. Boom! A huge explosion occurred and anyone nearby would have been obliterated. Luckily nobody was yet. With the Navy SEALs. The SEALs were nearing the area of interest when they saw an explosion and heard a distant boom. They froze in surprise. They then saw a much larger explosion and heard a much louder boom. Take cover. The commander ordered. And they did. Getting behind nearby rocks they took cover just in time as the remnants of the shockwave passed by them. Had they not taken cover, they likely would have just stumbled as someone walking on the street with their jacket open in some strong winds. Almost fell down a few times. The CO peeked up from his rock and after a few seconds deemed it safe. Though there was a new anomaly now. Before there were bursts of fire or explosions every few seconds. Now nothing. Keep moving. He orders. Scene cut. The group of 8 Navy SEALs, with 4 more back at the LZ, were near the area of interest. As they rounded a few more large rocks they could see, what can only be described as, a small wasteland. With the weapons hot and at the ready they looked as smoke was rising from the ground. One even saw a large rock that was burnt on one half and completely unscathed on the other. They then saw a red flash in the smoke and they all aimed their guns. A few even knelt down. They then heard a groan and saw a figure stumble in the smoke, before hearing it cough. Note to self, never do that again. They heard an American-sounding voice say. As the figure stepped out of the smoke some distance away he saw them and he went wide-eyed. Crud. A kid. One Marine exclaimed in surprise. One then saw his wrist and recognized the insignia. Holy SHT. That's Shifter. Before anything could be discussed further another figure began rising from the ground. Move. Run. Ben shouted as Nakib came into view shouting an Arabic swear. Contact. One SEAL shouted and they began firing at him. But the bullets from their rifles didn't do anything, as if they were shooting a tank with a Maxim machine gun. Soon Nakib began glowing for another self-detonation. Hurik Fi al-Hakika. He shouted, just before a Stinger missile blaster Nakib back, as well as Ben and the SEALs. F. One SEAL exclaimed in shock as the blast sent some rock fragments into his leg. Go go go. The second in command ordered, and one other SEAL lifted the wounded sailor/soldier and they began to fall back. Meanwhile the SEAL paced backwards while aiming their rifles to give cover. The F was that? One shouted. Questions later, actions now, so move your asses. The CO ordered as they watched several rockets be launched into in the area where Nakib was thrown as well as shots from AK-47s as well as an assortment of other weapons. Because of the Stinger missiles his detonation was activated prematurely, though he wasn't injured. Nakib again emerged from the smoke as bullets were pinging off of him like raindrops. The SEALs also opened fire, but being only equipped for reconnaissance they brought no heavy weaponry with them. Just rifles and grenades. Come on. Come on. Ben urged as he smacked the omnitrix hoping to start it up again. All while Nakib was on a warpath towards Ben, with the bullets doing absolutely nothing to stop him. Crud. Ben said as he ran in a different direction, hoping to get away from him while also leading him away from anyone. Nakib also began running at a faster speed than Ben was. As he was within a few meters of Ben, Kimiko came out of nowhere and tackled Nakib to the ground. The two soups rolled in the ground for a moment before Kimiko got up and kicked him. Then she picked him up by his head, began slamming his face on a rock repeatedly, even creating a small outline of his head on it. Nakib in turn charged up a small detonation, that blasted Kimiko off of him. As she stumbled back, Nakib got up and began charging up another blast and used his hands to aim it at her. She dove out of the way just in time. The Navy SEALs then threw several grenades that landed near him, and predictably they did nothing when they detonated. Except make Nakib even more angry, as well as the bullets hitting his body. Now would be a good time for you to turn into something. A Navy SEAL said, reloading his weapon. Not done recharging. Ben tells him. That thing runs on batteries? Another questioned. I don't know, it didn't come with a manual. Ben replies, still trying to get the watch to work. As Nakib began charging for another self-detonation, he was hit by a stream of water. Turning, people saw Alsakin Geyser firing streams of water from his hands. Nakib was being hit with the equivalent force of 2 fire hoses. But Nakib was soon able to focus and hold his ground and charged for another concentrated blast. Kimiko managed to tackle Alsakin Geyser out the way as he was paralyzed with fear. Then a wave of sand hit Nakib from the side, surprising him more than hurting. Turning, he saw Ramal Sand sloppily try to gather sand for another attack. He then sent it like a wave at Nakib, simply crossed his arms and began charging. Elena, who nearby with him, threw a rock to get his attention. He turned and she said, "Do this." Before mimicking something she saw on Avatar, The Last Airbender, where an earth/sand bender would drg their hand towards from a downward position at their target. Ramal Sand did this, and the result was a more concentrated stream of sand at Nakib's chest that caused him to stumble back and lose his charge. Alsakin Geyser then blasted him again, only this time the water blast was much more streamlined and powerful. This is cause Alsakin had rotated his wrists outward, so the back of his hand was pointed down. Like the rotation of his wrists increased or decreased the pressure. So much so that when the hit Nakib, he was thrown back to a rock, and when he got out of the way and the water was still going. The water cut the rock like butter. Ben meanwhile was still trying to get the omnitrix to work, as the SEALs got behind cover where Bashik's rebels were. Only now nobody was firing, since it was painfully obvious they only heavy weapons would even be able to dent Nakib. Including Sarab, whose powers, while useful, couldn't pack a punch. At least not without some other element. Come on. Ben urged while smacking it. Boom. A small explosion was heard that blasted back Ramal Sand and Alsakin Geyser, though they quickly got back up. Let me try. Elena said as she came by and pindeted the faceplate of the watch with the bottom of her fist. And like magic it lit up green. See. Hero time. Ben said as he searched for the alien he wanted. Come on, 4 arms. He prayed as he slapped it down. And in a green flash Ben now had the appearance of a mechanical humanoid in a mostly with black accents outfit, with the exception of his head and shoulders being a bluish-purple color with black spots. His eyes are green and he has 4 fingers on each white gloved hand, which are equipped with green and white vambraces and arm-length black sleeve covers. Along with nozzles or openings in multiple places. He has a window on his stomach that seems to be full of a cloud of gas. And the omnitrix symbol on what appears to be some kind of gas mask in front of his mouth. What the? Ben said in a sort of Brooklyn accent as he looked himself over. New guy. Now. Just great. He said frustrated. Yo pal, ain't you gonna do something? One of the SEALs asked, a little nervous by the fact that he could die. Look wise guy, I don't know how they do things wherever you's from, but in case you ain't been payin' attention, I don't know what this guy can do. Ben tries to reason as they hear the battle raging. For all I know I can kill you like that. He emphasizes by snapping a finger, but doing so he accidentally leaks out some sort of gas cloud. Right into the SEAL, who immediately began tearing up. The F. What is that? He asked. Sulfur dioxide. Ben answered casually, before raising his eyes. How'd I know dat? Has to be the alien instinct in you. Elena theorizes. So this guy just shoots the gas from his gut? The SEAL team leader questions. Gutrot not a bad name. Goin' with that. Ben said then look over to Nakib. And I got an idea how to stop our explodey friend. Good. One problem, I gotta get close. Gutrot told the SEAL leader. And even if we use his illusion powers he might still hear me, not like I'm designed for stealth. I got an idea. Elena said. Shoot. Gutrot replied. We make some noise. Elena said. With what, a boombox? Gutrot asked. How about a pair of choppers? The SEAL leader suggested. That could work. Gutrot agreed. Call them over. Yo tech. The SEAL leader called out. Yes sir. Radio the choppers, tell them we need a fly-by and to make a lot of noise. Gonna be pretty close to the action. The leader told him. How close sir? The Navy SEAL, nicknamed Tech, asked. As close as possible. I want them to see our peaches if we moon them. The leader urged. Tech did just that and relayed their location. Then said. 2 minutes out. We gotta keep TNT man occupied till then. Shouldn't be too hard. Gutrot said. Meanwhile Ramal Sand got blown back by a blast from Nakib. Fortunately he created a sand wall which absorbed a good portion of the force, but it still wasn't strong enough to stop him. Maybe not. Gutrot said as he saw that Alsakin was alone. He turned to Sarab and said. Hey duplicate him. He points to Alsakin. The Syrian illusion soup didn't understand English so he just stared. Anyone of you's a translator? One SEAL was and relayed Gutrit's message to Sarab Mirage. Who nodded and got up and extended his hand, and suddenly Alsakin geyser multiplied. Confusing Nakib who charged himself up for a self-detonation to eliminate them all at once. Alsakin saw them and pointed his hands downward at an angle, before unleashing 2 jets of water. Launching himself back and out of range, though the landing was rough, as he tumbled and rolled for several moments. 30 seconds. Tech called out. Make it dark. Gutrot ordered Sarab Mirage to do, which the SEAL translated in Arabic. And start shooting again, a little extra noise will help. And soon the SEALs and the Syrians started firing their weapons as Sarab Mirage created a black cloud around Nakib. Show time. Gutrot said as he jumped over the rocks and ran into the cloud. Just then the helicopters started to be heard, masking his hulking footsteps and getting Nakib's attention. Who tried to unleash a concentrated blast at the machines but missed, unintentionally solving Gutrit's problem of finding him in the dark. This allowed Gutrot to catch him by surprise when he said, Night night. Before extending his arms and unleashing 2 cloud streams of gas at him. Before Nakib could fully turn around he breathed it in and soon passed out. Despite the V in his system. Gutrot kept this up until he was sure Nakib wouldn't be able to get up for a while. After which he stepped out of the black cloud with a thumbs up. We good now. He told them. A short while later the SEAL leader was staring at a passed out Nakib and asked. What did you hit him with? A mixture of stuff really. Mostly anesthetics. Midazolam, halothane, nitrous oxide plus some other stuff. Gutrot lists off on his fingers. Now what? Elena asks. Not sure. Ben says as he scratches his head. Raynor? He suggested. Not like this is gonna stay quiet. Elena said, gesturing to the cameras on the soldiers' helmets. This some sort of secret mission thing? The SEAL leader asked. Yup. Gutrot answered honestly. Vought made this guy so they can put some like Homelander here to do your job. Homelander made this guy? One SEAL, who was a Homelander fan, asked in disbelief. No way, gotta be lying. The SEAL leader looked at Gutrot, Elena, then Kimiko, who had to take cover during the fight, as well as the other Syrian rebels. Tech, can you erase the footage on the cameras? Tech looked at him. Sir? He questioned, not believing what he heard. Delete any and all footage the cameras on our helmets recorded. Choppers too. He repeats before gesturing to the helicopters with gun cameras. Replace it with some other SHT, we found ISIS or the F and fought them. Then turns to the rest of his unit. Anyone got a problem with that? No sir. Was the collective response. I'll have it done in 10 minutes. Tech then began doing as ordered and replacing all the helmet camera footage with doctored images. No self-detonating soup, no gut rot, just them firing at darkness and blurred images. Guess we'll take this guy. Gutrot said as he was about to pick up the unconscious Nakib. He throws him over his shoulder and begins walking. See ya. Gives a two-finger salute as they all begin to leave. Scene cut. Gutrot, who just dosed Nakib with some more knockout gas, laid him on the ground before turning to Kimiko and Elena. They were now on the coast waiting for a CIA boat to pick up Nakib, then they can head back to the USA. You sure this is the right place, right? Ben asked as he looked over the water. It was nearing midnight and they had a long day. Yes, I'm sure. Elena said as she looked on the GPS on her phone. It was a section of coast that the Syrian regime could only patrol occasionally, as it made them easy targets for any enemy ships. North of Banias and south of Gabla Jabla in English. Kimiko then whistled as she pointed to two seaplanes coming in. They landed, then a short while later a couple of CIA operatives on a boat came over. Your gas better be as good as mine. Gutrot quipped as he handed over Nakib to the operatives, who placed a mask around his face that was attached to a tank that would constantly fill his body with the custom knockout gas for several hours. Ben then changed back to human while a second boat was coming to take them to a plane, that was to take them to a base where they could be escorted home. While the plane carrying Nakib was sent in a different direction. America. CIA building. Madeline Stillwell had been waiting for hours now for this meeting. Dumb government, never get stuff done on time. Until finally the door to the conference room opened and Lily Choi stepped out. Ben's lawyer ally, this caused Stillwell to sit up in surprise. Thank you so much for your time, Mrs. Raynor, and sorry for going over, but it's important to my client that every criteria is being met. This is very important to him. A small slip up and he'll just explode. Lily spoke with BS facts in order to seem like they concluded an official meeting rather than do a sort of filibuster. Believe me, when it comes to the US government there's plenty of people like that. Raynor said, keeping up with the ruse. They then shook hands and parted way. Miss Stillwell, sorry I kept you waiting. Raynor says, not meaning she's sorry, after turning to the VOD executive. Well, let's get started, shall we? Stillwell said as she started to step towards the conference room. Oh no. Raynor said with a smug look. We have a special room reserved for you. Scene cut. Stillwell was now in what can be passed for an interrogation room. Only a single door in or out, a single light bulb shined at the table, which had a metal foldable chair for Stillwell. What is this, law and order? No, it's your F. Raynor said. I'm afraid I'm not following. Stillwell replied, with confusion. You and your corporation are F. Rayner said. Unequivocally, ultimately, unilaterally F. She added. How was that? Is that clearer for you? She asked. Before Stillwell could reply, Rayner continued. I'm just gonna get to the point cause this isn't some hit Amazon Prime show, or cartoon, or some F-up fanfiction. For the last half-century, you have been feeding the American people the lie that your superheroes are chosen by God. Chuckles. I mean, I get it. Jamming illegal DRGs into babies' arms, I mean, that doesn't quite have the same ring. Stillwell gulped, thinking they didn't know that much. I don't know dash. And that's not even the worst part. Rayner continued. Trying to create terrorists, now that is just exhales to mimic an explosion, mind-blowing in every bad way. Now that's just ridiculous. Stillwell says, pretending to be amused. Well, what about her? Rayner says, putting a picture of Kimiko, one where just after Frenchie freed her. I've never seen that woman before. She and Shifter's little gang attacked out tower. Stillwell replied. Fair point. Rayner accepts. You probably have so much illegal SHT going on, it's hard enough. Not like you can hire nannies like you do for your Build-A-Baby. Now look dash, Stillwell tried to counter. Shut the F up, you blonde piece of corporate dog SHT. Rayner spat. 'Cause we also have this guy now. Throws a couple of still images of naked, one of him against US soldiers and another of him incapacitated with a mask to deliver a gas in his system. Didn't work, by the way. So you're gonna stop trying to get your assholes in the military and we're gonna go with the status quo where we're the government and you're just the assholes who keep getting their ass kicked by a frickin' 10-year-old who doesn't even know Turkey is a country. She concludes as Stillwell is shocked by these findings. Rayner gets up and walks out. Now get the F out this building. She says as she leaves. With Annie. So let me get this straight. Justine Dwyer said as Annie answered the last question. You ran into Shifter at the Believe Expo. But you didn't know him. Well, he was human then. And until the other day Shifter was just random aliens, I thought it might have just been a hero team of different aliens. Annie said. And that Vought Tower showdown with Vilgax, can you put up some footage? Yeah, there. Justin requested and on-screen people saw selected clips of the fight against Vilgax. Be honest, how scared were you? I was terrified. Annie answered bluntly. I mean, this was the toughest person we all faced easily. And if we failed, who knows how many people he could have hurt. In the distance Annie's mom Donna was smiling. So you were scared for you and the civilians? Justin wanted to clarify. I was scared I wasn't gonna be able to do what I came here to do, save people. Annie said truthfully. Justin nodded and there was a moment of silence. Now I have to ask something and it's gonna be kinda personal. Taking it easy on me so far, Justin. Annie joked. It's about your boyfriend, Hugh Campbell. He said and tension filled the room. Do you think he was using you? Tension. To get dirt or maybe secrets? Tension. I'm not sure. Annie answered honestly. When I met Huey I was at a really vulnerable place, and he gave me some DMN good advice. She said, recalling that day on the bench. And things seemed to happen at random. Next time I saw him was the race and we started going out and it was normal. Is that why maybe you ignored any signs? Justin asked. 'Cause it all felt normal. Annie thinks back. That's the thing, there weren't any. She answers. I mean, it was just normal date stuff, bowling, bar trivia. I was surrounded by fake people and he was the only one that was real. She adds. Do you think your relationship with him allowed Shifter, Chimera and Vilgax to? Enough. Annie said, finally having it. Enough. Alright, I have no idea if he was using me or not. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But you weren't there. Just like you weren't there when Ben was the one who told us how to beat Vilgax. So don't accuse me of being an idiot or whatever, 'cause I'm not. Powers or no powers, we make mistakes, and I'm done taking people's SHT just for being myself and being forced to do SHT interviews and commercials. She gets up and starts to leave. As she passes by him she says, "What will your friends think of that?" Leaving her mother shocked. Anika's apartment. Anika came inside to her apartment hoping to see it empty again. Instead she came upon Kimiko, Ben, and Elena asleep in her kitchen eating pizza. "Want a slice?" Ben asked, holding up a slice. What have you guys been doing?" Anika asks. They suddenly recall their trip to Syria, their time in Syria, and finally their trip back. Where instead of taking a long and complex trip back, Ben went upgrade as soon as he could and hijacked the plane and got them to New York City. Best part, no jet lag. "Do you really want to know?" Elena asked. "Probably shouldn't." Anika says as she walks to the couch. "Did you get what you wanted from Mave?" She questions as she sits down. "No, something came up. Vought created a soup terrorist in Syria." Ben told her. "What?" Anika asks in shock. "Ben." Elena says. "We can't tell anyone." Ben shakes his head. "All bets are off now," he says with conviction. "Later we go to Mave's, find a weakness for Homelander," he adds. "Then we can take him down." "That's gonna be impossible," Anika says. "All his records are locked tighter than Fort Knox." They said that about the moon. And next day Neil Armstrong and Buzz Lightyear were all, one small step for man. Ben countered. It was Buzz Aldrin, and it took years and a lot of money before they could get him to the moon. Elena said. But in the end they did it. Ben pointed out. And who else would know what his weakness is besides Mave? And we know how to get to her. Reminding them of what they were doing before they got the call from Raynor. So what's the plan? Elena asked. Ask her nicely. Well, we kidnap her lady friend first, we get the info, we don't harm her, you know, classic stuff. Ben suggested. They'll track Mave's movements. Elena points out. And people will hear us, and you don't have a reputation for inflicting bodily HRD on people. Pointing out the flaws. Fair point. Ben agrees. Kimiko then signs about hacking the tracking chip so it places Mave somewhere else. It could work, but without chip I can't do it alone. Elena says, a little sad about being reminded of Chip. The three then turn to Anika as she sips from her water bottle. What? How much to convince you to quit VOT and work for us? Ben asks. Do you have that much? Anika asks. Name your price. Elena says, having dealt with Ben's finances after he shared his accounts. Scene cut. He did have that much. Now Anika and Elena are getting a program ready for the tracking chip. But first. Hours later at adult Elena's apartment. Elena unlocked the door to her apartment and dropped her keys in a bowl by the door. She was carrying some groceries that she needed to make dinner. Then she was gonna try to watch something and not think about Mave. Maybe Amazon Prime has something on. Hey, how's it going? She heard someone say. Turning around in a panic, Elena saw an Asian woman rush up to her and place her hand over her mouth. Elena tried to push away, but it was like pushing against a concrete wall. She was a soup. The Asian woman put a finger to her lips signaling Elena to be quiet. The Asian woman then took her hand away and backed up. You're Elena, right? The voice from before asked, and the Hispanic woman turned to the voice coming from the living room. Name's Ben. You're Shifter. Elena pointed out. Just Ben. Or BEN10. Ben corrected. Let's skip the boring stuff and get to the point. He said as he grabbed her phone from the table she placed it on. I know about you and Mave, I need you to call her and get her to come here. Ben instructs. If I say no? Elena asks in fear. I won't hurt you. Ben reassures. Not how I roll. But I can make sure you never see your family again, also let Mave know about this whole thing when I see her again. If you can go after her, why do you need me? Elena questions, as she looks at Kimiko, who has gone to the kitchen to put the groceries away. Can't let good ice cream melt. 'Cause I want to ask her something, and having a person she cares about is good leverage. Bad guys do it me, and it works until they break their end of the bargain. Ben tells her. I don't have her number. Elena tries to lie. No problem. Ben says with a smile. We got you. Pulls out a slip of paper with Mave's personal phone number. Mind if I make a sandwich? He asks. With Mave. Queen Mave was sitting on her couch smoking a vape as two men lay in her bed passed out. Just as she was puffing out a cloud of smoke, her phone was ringing again. Looking at it, she saw the caller ID was a number she didn't recognize. Picking it up, she began talking. Look, if you're some salesperson dash. Hey, it's me. The voice of her ex-girlfriend said through the phone. Elena? How'd you get this number? Mave asks. Elena stuttered. Look, if this is about the other day. Mave asked. It's not. I want you to know that I'm okay and I'm not hurt. Elena began to say slowly and carefully. Shifter, or Ben as he wants to be called, said he isn't gonna hurt me. That sobered Mave up. She dropped her vape pen and stood up. He wants to talk to you, come to my place, and if you don't he's gonna take me away somewhere. I don't know, just away from my parents, my sister. You. Come alone, wear something normal, not your VOD outfit. You'll find out when you get here. The phone call then ends. The Amazonian soup then quickly goes to change, then subtlety makes her way down and out of the tower. Scene cut. Mave steps in Elena's apartment, alert for a soup who's been on a bender of SEC partners, alcohol and DRGS. She looks around but doesn't see anyone. But she sees a note on a table. She goes to it, and on the note is a pill bottle. With only a single pill. Go to the sink and drink it, Elena. It read with Elena's handwriting. Turning the knot over was more words. You need to be sober for this. Mave followed the instruction and went to the sink and swallowed the pill. Seemingly within moments she began hurling up the alcoholic contents in her stomach. Turns out that was some pill that reacts to alcohol like mints in a soda bottle. So Mave sprayed what was in her stomach like a hose for several moments. Coughing, she opened the fridge where she saw a water bottle with another note from Elena to drink it. Taking a second to compose herself, she noticed another note by the sink. Keys in the bowl, drive to the meeting point, go to the roof. GPS is already set, Ben. Mave followed this and went to Elena's Lexus and began driving to the coordinates. Vought. What do you mean they stopped my plan? Homelander asked incredulously. What plan? He laughed as he adjusted his cape and sat down. Stillwell had come to Homelander's apartment at Vought Tower and said that his plan was foiled. The one where you sent Compound V to terrorists, who then became super terrorists, and Congress allows you in the military. Homelander shakes his head. Doesn't ring a bell. Allow me to fill in the details. Edgar said, coming in unannounced. Being incompetent man-child that you are risked this company, and people's lives when you smuggled vials of Compound V all over the Middle East to terrorist groups. Only a single individual managed to survive with powers, and now he's in government custody, along with a sample of Compound V, with leverage over us. Now we are being told what we can and can't, not to mention young Tennyson hasn't made an appearance since the brawl downstairs. Edgar said. Kid is probably just scared, or tired. Homelander guessed. Scared of what? I was there, he was human and he was challenging you. Edgar reminded. The only thing stopping that kid from killing you is himself. You do well to remember that. Turns to Stillwell. Your days here are numbered, I hope you're aware of that. Then he leaves. How does he just show up like that? Homelander asks. Regardless of what we think he's right. Stillwell said. This kid has done a number on you and a 7 and he wasn't even trying to kill you. If he does. She added a little worried. Homelander scoffed at that. Come on, nothing can kill me. He says without worry. With Mave. Mave walked through the doorway arriving at the roof of an old apartment building in a rundown part of New York. Someone bought the property, but had yet to do anything with it, it wasn't even renovated yet. Mave started to look around for a note or something and eventually she saw Ben, as 4 arms holding up a tied-up and gagged Elena on his should like a sack of flour or potatoes. As Maeve's eyes widened in shock, someone came at her on the side and put a cloth over her face. She quickly pushed off her assailant, Kimiko, but not before breathing in some of the substance. Suddenly she felt unbalanced and dizzy, making kneel down. The F. She gritted out. So this is how it's gonna go. Ben says. You're gonna tell me what happened or your ex is gonna take a permanent Z. He threatened. As Maeve tried to get up, Ben continued. Normally you might be able to get to her, probably even avoid me, but not us while you're like this. What do you want? Maeve said, as she stumbled down. The truth. Ben simply said. About what? Maeve asked. Vought. Stocks. Whatever's got you all twisted inside that you couldn't look me in the eye before. Pause. Something happened and it must be bad. So. Talk. Or else. Jostles the hostage Elena, Maeve's ex-girlfriend, who screams into the duct tape. Maeve isn't buying it though. Please. She scoffs, you're not a killer. I know this is just an act dash. Ben pushed Elena, Maeve's ex, over his shoulder so she slips down. Maeve, realizing he's probably serious, shouts. He killed them. Forearms catches Elena, Maeve's ex, with a quick reaction with his right lower arm. Who? He wants to know. Maeve starts crying. Please, not in front of her. She begs. Keep talking or this will be the last time you see her. He threatens, meaning he'll hide Elena, Maeve's ex, since not knowing where they are or how they are can hurt much worse. Flight 37. Maeve chokes out in a sob. We got there before it crashed. Sniffs, we saved them, but then Homelander screwed up, destroyed the controls. Pauses to breathe. Didn't even try to lift the plane. Didn't let us save one, not a single one. She wheezes. Forearms puts Elena, Maeve's ex, safely on the roof. Didn't or wouldn't, he asks, wanting a clarification. Wouldn't. Maeve says as she starts sobbing, the guilt overwhelming her. Forearms turns back into Ben and walks over to her, as Kimiko frees Elena, Maeve's ex, from her binds. How can I stop him? He asks Maeve as he stands over her. Maeve controls her sobs. I breathes in, don't breathes knn, now she stutters. But who would? Wants to now. Vagabond maybe. Maeve says, then gulps. He's a scientist, retired a while back. He cooked Homelander in a lab. Ben turns to Kimiko and jerks his head to the stairs as they walk away. What happens now? Maeve wonders, not looking at him. Ben stops and turns to her. I'm gonna stop him. Still looking at the ground, Maeve asks another question. And us? Worrying about her safety and especially Elena's. Ben looks to Maeve, then Elena, Maeve's ex, and says. We'll see. Then walks away. When Ben leaves, it's just Maeve and Elena, Maeve's ex, on the roof staring at each other. Well, Elena stares, Maeve can't look at her. After a while Elena speaks up. Is that why you, refers to her coming to her place drunk on a whim. A traumatic experience is a big trigger for people to relapse. Especially when they aren't fully clean and sober. Maeve nods. I'm sorry. For all this SHT. It's my fault. She apologizes, as she starts crying. The faces of those people on the plane coming back to her. And despite what has transpired, Elena opted to go and comfort her ex, as opposed to just leaving. Scene cut. Anika was driving her Prius away from the building, while Kimiko was in the passenger seat. Ben and Elena were in the back. During the ordeal, Anika and Elena each took a laptop to redirect the chip for Mave to show she was at Mave's ex apartment. So hopefully they would think she just went to hook up with an ex. And also showing Anika and her car was some late-night coffee bar that computer nerds would hang out. Nobody was talking. Now what? Elena asks Ben, who was looking at the window as they passed by buildings. We find Vogelbaum. Ben says simply. Mediterranean Sea. So you're telling me that you can't explain that huge as fireworks display that occurred last night? The admiral of the task force questioned the Navy SEALs, who were on deck at attention. Apparently what had transpired was also seen from a distance by Russian soldiers. They had no idea of Nakib and Ben's fight, but they saw American helicopters flying, breaking international law. I think, not an expert. But everyone is breaking international law by not letting the Middle East govern themselves and bombing it to smithereens and risking an international incident. Yes, sir. The CO in charge of the SEAL team that was sent over responded. Bullshit. The admiral spits. But before he can continue, several blacked-out helicopters hover above them. One lowers a rope ladder carrying Dina Madani. Dina Madani, military police of the 110th, I'm taking these men into my custody, effective immediately by orders of the Secretary of the Navy. Interfere and we will charge you with obstruction. She says as she hands the admiral a paper explaining it. You are to come with us immediately, my men are retrieving your personal effects, at this moment in time you are no longer part of the U.S. Navy. She quickly says as they are forced to climb up the ladders. In one of the choppers the CO climbs up and is surprised to see the Syrian rebel leader sitting in one of the seats. Soon Madani comes up and they sit across from each other. What's going on? The former SEAL wants to know. Needed a cover to get you to come with us. Madani simply explains. Us? He asks. G3. She replies. What about him? How'd you get him here? He asks, referring to Bashik. American passports. Was the simple reply. JFK. Bashik's wife, 2 sons, and his daughter were departing from a plane along with other Syrians. However, unlike most, instead of having to go through customs and extra searches, they presented their fully legal and approved U.S. passports to the TSA and government authorities. G3 base. Sir Agent Madani has confirmed she has retrieved the people of interest and is making her way to the nearest base. A G3 soldier informed Solomon. Good, see to it our latest recruits' accommodations are met when they arrive to the training facility. Solomon responded. Then give me a detailed report on those 4 soups. From their strengths and weaknesses to their favorite food. And tell Madani she's going to need CIA credentials for her next assignment. On it, sir. The G3 soldier saluted. Solomon then pulls up the footage the recon squad took while they observed the fight from a distance. Previously they were dispatched to observe Nakib and report back, but ended getting more data on Shifter and several new soups. Someone at VOD is getting desperate. The voice of the hidden leader spoke from a separate screen. We must ensure we are not. Solomon was ordered. Of course, sir, I've already ensured VOD has no real concrete information they can us. Just unconfirmed rumors at best. Solomon reports. All false. The leader asks skeptically. Some truth of course, but as you say. Solomon answered. Just cause it's the truth doesn't mean it's believable. The leader said. Good work, my old friend. Now keep an eye on young Tennyson's progress. Yes, sir, and pardon me, but I still feel strongly we should monitor him more closely. Solomon suggests, likely not for the first time. No. The leader rejects. This isn't a normal target. Not only is he of interest to multiple parties, but those parties are now interested in us. Any of our spies, or surveillance teams may likely reveal more information to our enemies. He reasons. Knowledge is power, and when it comes to power it is better for it to be in no hands, than the wrong ones. Our people are the best in the world. Solomon says with assurance. And the Germans thought their Enigma code was the best in the world, yet it was being cracked before the war even began. Mussolini also thought his soldiers were the best when they invaded Greece in 1940. The Japanese thought they were better when they invaded China. Guess where that led them? The hidden leader questioned. They lost the war. Solomon answered, knowing the answer. Indeed. And in this war we cannot afford any slip-ups. The leader concluded before he logged off. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 15. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author AUFan62 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.